Good morning. I'm delighted to be here. My name is Barry MacDonald. I served 2 terms as your chair of the Federation of Hong Kong Business Associations worldwide. And last year I completed the 2 terms, and George, who opened up this morning, succeeded me. This is his first Hong Kong Forum as chairman. And I have to commend George, the office holders, the Federation office holders, 6 of us from around the world, and also particularly the TDC and the Secretariat for putting on a very successful Hong Kong Forum. As George noted, the attendance is superb. We're expecting 400 delegates in this room, which I think is the best ever Hong Kong Forum in our 11 years plus. So it's a big event, and I think you're going to enjoy the next 2 days very much. I'm also from Canada, Vancouver, Canada, past chairman of the Hong Kong Canada Business Association, and I'd like to confirm Chairman So's comments that after 7 p.m. Canadians do thrive in Hong Kong, but we're also pretty good before 7 p.m. too. We've got an interesting star leaders. This is really, I think, the best session, well, I can say that because I'm moderating, but the best session of the 2 days of the Hong Kong Forum, because we have, usually the session has 3 top, and again this year, 3 top Hong Kong business leaders. The focus is kind of using Hong Kong as your starting point or your business hub to grow internationally, whether it's your business or your profession. And we have 3 speakers from unique backgrounds that all have a different perspective, and I think we're going to find their experiences very relevant and very interesting this morning. The 3 speakers, I'm going to just quickly introduce each speaker right now in the format for this morning, and then afterwards each speaker is going to speak for about 15 minutes, and I'll do a more fuller introduction just before each comes up to present. And then at the end we'll have a question and answer similar to what George did with Chairman So. So the 3 speakers we have is, the first one will be Bernard Chan, who is Chair of the Council of Sustainable Development for the Hong Kong Government. Our second speaker, another Mr. Chan, is Paul Chan, who is co-chairman of Crowe Horwath, a prominent Hong Kong certified public accounting firm. And our third speaker is James Thompson, chairman of Crown Shipping. So I will now start with Bernard Chan as our first speaker. Mr. Chan, Bernard, is both a member of the Legislative Council and the Executive Council of the Hong Kong Government, and is currently deputy on the National People's Congress. But what Mr. Chan will be focusing on is his chairman experiences with the Council of Sustainable Development for the Hong Kong Government. And this was established by the Chief Executive a few years ago, by the Chief Executive. And its mandate is to provide strategic input to the Hong Kong Government on sustainability and integrating Hong Kong's social, cultural, and environmental perspectives. So I think Mr. Chan will be talking about that in particular for the 15 minutes. But his business, he's also chairman of Asia Financial Holdings, which is a prominent insurance fund company in Hong Kong. And in addition to all this, you find time for many other community and professional board appointments in Hong Kong. So please join me in welcoming Bernard Chan.
Good morning. First, I'd like to welcome you all to Hong Kong. I suspect that many of you is no stranger to Hong Kong. You've probably been through Hong Kong many times. But perhaps also allow me for maybe 5 minutes for some history of Hong Kong, in case you're not aware of how we get to where we are today. Reason for that is, well, it's not even a surprise to you, even surprise to me. Many of us in Hong Kong, actually, up until 1997, as you might know, that 1997 is a key year. That's the year that Hong Kong returned to China. And before 1997, what happened to Hong Kong? Well, there's only one aim for most Hong Kong people, is to make money. Well, there's nothing wrong with making money. But why? Why there's this rush to make money? Because the future is uncertain. Most of us, including myself, have no idea what will happen to Hong Kong after the return to China. Of course, running up to 97, I think people are feeling a lot more comfortable. But for the most part of the 80s and to the early part of the 90s, most people are just frightened that the uncertainty. So we all try to make the most money that we can. Hopefully, we are rich enough that we can migrate ourselves to perhaps to your countries, to get a foreign passport, to buy the insurance, and come back to work, continue to work in Hong Kong, but with a foreign residency somewhere else. So that's, I think, can speak for most people in the business in Hong Kong. So why I tell you all this? Well, interesting enough, past 1997, so what happened to Hong Kong after 1997? In fact, the very first day after Hong Kong returned to China in 1997, we got hit with Asia financial crisis. First started off with Thailand, and then rose out to the rest of Asia, including Hong Kong. So we went through a period of 5 years of a pretty tough time. And then after that, we always also hit with some health issues. We had bird flu crisis in Hong Kong. Then we also have the infamous SARS that pretty much put the city to a stop. So again, what was in the minds of most people? Economy. So all focus has been put on the economy, and nothing wrong with that. But it's interesting, soon after the SARS crisis in 2003, obviously, thanks to our motherland, China, who since 2003 has shown huge support to Hong Kong with a number of initiatives to help Hong Kong to pass through this very difficult time. And from then on, interestingly, in Hong Kong, there's a new growing aspiration, especially from the younger part of our community. And that is the whole, what also is increasingly a buzzword, sustainability. So in this city, no longer will we just only focus on economic activities, but we also like to look at issues like, as our moderator have alluded earlier, issues such as heritage conservations to the environment, to the livelihood of the people. So no longer we are only just looking at one side of the picture. I think people usually sum up Hong Kong as just, well, this is a business city. Well, it's now more than just a business city. As some of you who are familiar with Hong Kong, the chief executive of Hong Kong, in his policy address 3 years ago, he devoted almost 1/3 of his policy address, focusing on heritage conservation. It is, in fact, something that I've never heard of in Hong Kong. In fact, the last 5 years, the number of projects that we have embarked on in preserving our past probably have outdone what we have done in the last 40 years. Why? Well, perhaps, as I mentioned to you, up to 1997, I think most people in Hong Kong really don't care about our past when we don't even know what our future is. Well, now our future is quite certain. I think, as our TDC chairman, Jackson, alluded earlier, we for sure know what our role is now going forward. And of course, with the support from the mainland, I think most people in Hong Kong now clearly know this is our home. And they are not going to go away this time. Well, especially now with the world economy, it's quite clear that most of us here to stay. So much efforts by the government has now been put on to issues as improving the environment, improving the livelihood of people, town planning, city planning, everything. It is in fact one of I think personally, is a key edge of Hong Kong over some of our mainland counterparts, because many of I'm also in the business, so I deal with many of my foreign counterparts. They may be their business may be in all parts of China, but most of the time they would prefer to put their family in Hong Kong, because Hong Kong is perhaps the one place in China that is perhaps the most safe, I suppose, safe not just in terms of crime, but in terms of overall. I mean, you can put your kids in Hong Kong to school. in probably the safest environment, probably environment that probably the closest to your home, to the homes of many of our expatriates coming to work in Hong Kong. So it is a place that people are more familiar with. And so they're very concerned about not only, what the school system we have in Hong Kong, to the clean air. Now, I know people have heard some horror story about Hong Kong, the air quality. But again, if some of you have traveled to the rest of China, then I think you know what I mean. It's all relative. I hope I'm not offending anyone from our counterpart cities in China, but from my own experience, I go to China quite often, but I can say that we have the best air quality in China. But this is obviously not, have any sign of complacency. There's a lot more work need to be done. My wife's from Singapore, and we always argue, which is a better city. I can tell you that at home, I always win the argument. But of course, I agree. Singapore, in many aspects, is better than Hong Kong. But so, that's really good for us. We always continue to keep up and try to improve ourselves. So the government has actually put in a lot of effort to clean up, the environment, the air quality. So I am sure that we will continue. This will continue to be a winning edge over many of our similar counterparts in the region. So apart from the air quality, it's also the quality of life. Quality of life issue is also a very important one for many of our, not just the local, especially also our expatriates. Again, Hong Kong is not a cheap place to live. So we just have to live with. But again, the question is, what do we offer them in return? I mentioned earlier, this is probably one of the safest places you can imagine. We have a very good civil society. There's obviously the freedom of speech, the free press, and all these things you always hear about Hong Kong, and it's true. And the funny thing is, most people in Hong Kong, we don't get to appreciate this. We take it for granted. This is, because we live here, and we always take this thing for granted. Only until you left Hong Kong. And then after, no matter it's 1 day or 2 days, and on our way back to Hong Kong, the minute you pass through our immigration, then you say, wow, my goodness, thank God I'm back to Hong Kong. Because things here actually work. So the civil servants here, the whole structure here is very important because it's the backbone for Hong Kong. We don't have any natural resources here. Unlike many of our counterparts, all we had in Hong Kong is people. But the people here, I'm sure many of you who have worked with your counterparts in Hong Kong, you will agree with me that, it is the people, the flexibility, and truly all very motivated. So this is, again, another winning edge of Hong Kong. Many of us have worked, myself included, we have, in fact, it's only been the last 10, 15 years that we have been working with our partners in China, even ourselves. Think about it. We are no different from you. China is also a very foreign place to us. But because we have that 10, 15 years ahead of you, we have spent at least 10, 15 years working with our counterparts in China, so we know their culture. We understand how the system works. At the same time, we understand your system and your culture. So we are in a perfect place that we understand the needs of yours. Of course, not to mention the compliance issue. We are accustomed to the compliance requirement, the transparency requirements from the world standard, while at the same time we understand the different local constraints in China. And so I believe personally that we have the best of two worlds. I'm here not just to promote Hong Kong. I'm here telling you that from the fact that I'm in business and why I'm still here. Of course, I understand some of our businesses will need to be relocated to China for the simple fact that you have to be closer to your clients. So that's given. But I still think that for most of you, for perhaps your headquarters, regional quarters, you still want to put it in Hong Kong simply for the fact that we have a good structure to protect the interests of your investments. At the same time, also more importantly, is the people again. Where do you want to put your family? Where do you want to put your best talent, where are they going to be located? In Hong Kong, and for the last 5-6 years, the government has put in a lot of effort to make sure that we're not just only focused on the business aspect, but we also put in a lot of our resources into the quality of life. One last point I want to mention, healthcare. I mean, again, healthcare. We have an excellent healthcare system in Hong Kong, one that I think is perhaps one of the best in the region. Of course, lately, we are seeing some new crisis even for local people, because our system is so good, and we have now many of our mainlanders, our friends from the Mainland China, is also coming to Hong Kong to use our facilities. So there is now a constraint increasingly in also our healthcare delivery. But this is also an issue that Hong Kong government is trying to address. There will be more land allocated for new providers in Hong Kong. So, and school as well. Another issue I think many of you will be of concern is international schools. Would there be international school provided for many of your family? And again, due to the increasing demand in this area, there is a sort of a shortage. It's not exactly a shortage, it's just a mismatch. There are still capacity, but perhaps not on Hong Kong Island, which is of big demand. So again, the government is putting in resources in that area to expand those supply. So we as a city, we understand the needs for Hong Kong is not only on business, which is also very important, but apart from business, we need to build an environment, a very safe environment, a place with good quality of life provided for our local people as well as for our international expatriates investment community. So with that, I'd just like to, in short, hopefully in that 5-10 minutes, convinced that this is the right place for you to come, the place not just to come in to invest, but come place to live. Thank you.
Thank you, Bernard. I lived in Hong Kong for 7 years in the 1990s, and I certainly agree with your comments about the advantages of Hong Kong. Things work here. It's flexible. It's one of the best countries, one of the best cities in the world to get things done, and a very good healthcare system, the envy of the world. So thank you for those comments. Our next Mr. Chan is Paul Chan. Paul is currently a member of the Legislative Council, or LegCo, representing the accounting constituency in Hong Kong. And he's a past president of the Hong Kong Institute of Certified Public Accountants. Mr. Chan's main role in the accounting world is as co-chairman, as I said a few minutes ago, of Crowe, Horwath, CPA firm, a prominent Hong Kong accounting firm. And in addition to that, like the other speakers, many directorships, community activity, nonprofit boards. Paul is going to share with us his comments about the accounting profession, particularly its development in China, linking it in with China's recent renewal of its 5-year plan. Now, are you asking yourselves, why should I be interested in the development of the accounting profession in China if you're not an accountant? I'm an accountant, so I automatically find that interesting. But you may be asking, why is that relevant to me? And I can share with you the answer is that China's economy is the fastest growing economy in the world, and a key part of that is its capital markets, the ability of Chinese companies to raise funds domestically and internationally, particularly by going public on a stock exchange, Shanghai, Hong Kong, New York, Toronto, or another exchange around the world. And the ability to attract that capital, accountants are effectively the independent referees in the system. So the development of the accounting profession is very strongly linked into the growth of the capital markets in China. So let's join me in welcoming Paul Chan.
Good morning, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. I must thank Hong Kong TDC for inviting me here to share with you a few thoughts. The theme of my presentation this morning is opportunities for Hong Kong professions in the next 5 years. And as an accountant, I choose to use the accounting profession as an example. This is the agenda for the presentation, a macro view, because I think this is very important for us to grasp the context and the big picture, and then an historical recap of the economic development on China, the challenges facing her in the next 5 years, the key messages in the 12 five-year plan, Hong Kong's unique role in China's economic development, and the success of the accounting profession here in Hong Kong in the past, and looking into the future. Well, why macro view is important? Number one, professional service is a derived demand. Same for accounting services. If the underlying economic activities is good, then the demand for our services would be very good. And secondly, it is the impact of the Chinese economy on our economy. As you know, Hong Kong is extremely external reliant. In the past, it has been said that if the US sneezed, Hong Kong would catch a cold. But nowadays, if China has any hiccups, we will be in deep trouble. So for us in Hong Kong to be certain of our economic development in the future, apart from watching closely what is happening in the US and Europe, we have also to pay very close attention to the developments on the motherland. And I choose to give you this quick overview, also because of your ambassadors for Hong Kong. And I think it would be helpful to you to have a better understanding of the economic dynamics here. Well, historical recap number one is on the GDP growth. From 79 to 1999, over a period of 20 years, the average GDP growth is 9.9% per annum. And from 2001 to 2010, the last decade, it was 10.7%. This is the only country in history has such a prolonged period of such a fast economic growth. Nowhere in the world up till now. And if you look at the recent figures, I mean, if you look at the last 5 years, which is the period of the 11 five-year plan, the average GDP growth was 11.7%, even higher. That tells you the momentum of the economic growth. And in the past 30 years, there were 3 major leaps bringing about this economic development. The first, of course, when Deng Xiaoping announced China open up to the outside world after closing their doors for 30 years. The first is the rural reform. The implication is to increase the income of farmers, release the productivity of the farmers, and more importantly, release a tremendous number of cheap labor to the cities, which become a very important factor of production. And the second major leap was in 1990 to 1992. As you all recall, in 1989, the tragedy in Tiananmen Square happened, and all foreign countries stopped their investment into China. The only major investor at that time is people from Hong Kong. And there were very serious political struggles inside of China. And at that time, Deng Xiaoping visited Guangdong and Shenzhen, and then reaffirmed the opening up policy. And that pushed the opening up progress and pushed the economic development in China. And from 2001 to 2007, the GDP growth was from 8.3% to 14.2%. So actually, in the past 2-3 years, because the external economic situation, because of the fear of an overheated economy, China is in fact trying to keep the growth under control and reduce the growth rate. Well, if we take a look of the size of the economy in a relative sense so that we understand better the economic strength of China. In 2005, we overtook UK. In 2007, we overtook Germany. And last year, we overtook Japan. And now become the second largest economy in the world. We expect to catch up with the US in 2025. That means about 14 years later. If this target is achieved, then US and China will each contribute about 15% of the world GDP. And the target GDP, the GDP for 2010 is 4,300. I give you this figure because then you know actually although the economy, the size of the economy is huge, on a per capita basis is still relatively very humble. By World Bank standard, this is the lower middle income country. The target GDP, not in 2010, I'm sorry, there is a typing mistake here. It is 2020. The target is US 11,900. It is slightly more than a double. So in that sense, purely from numbers, seems to be an achievable kind of target. Well, what were the success factors of China in the past 30 years of opening up? It was firstly because of low labor costs, abundant supply of cheap labor. The second is the low land costs. And the third one is without a proper regard to the environment, so the environmental costs. Then you can understand in the past 30 years, the growth was in fact generated by low value-added manufacturing and very dependent on exports. The fifth pillar for the past economic growth is number one, foreign investment, number two, export, and number three, infrastructure investment. But this could not carry on without limit. So the trouble or the challenges facing mainland at the moment from an external standpoint, as you all know, the slow recovery in the US, the Eurozone debt problem, we all fear about a possible double dip. And then the third one is what we call the middle income country trap. That means as a country, when you grow from a very low starting point, like China, as I outlined earlier, whether you are able to leap forward, this is a very difficult hurdle. Because in the past, you can rely on cheap labor costs, cheap land costs, environmental issues being ignored. But going forward, you cannot rely on that. If you cannot rely on that, what will be your growth engines? But on the other hand, you cannot totally at once relinquish all this because this is with you. So around the world, if you look at economic history, some countries were able to break through, countries like Japan, Korea, Singapore, and Hong Kong. But there were countries who was, relatively speaking, struggling. Very difficult to get through this hurdle. Countries like Malaysia and America. So facing all this external challenge, then you can understand internally to tackle this, China has to increase domestic demand, consumer demand, as mentioned by Chairman Jack. This is to minimize the dependence on external demand, minimize the dependence on export, and then enhance the manufacturing industry in areas of technology and knowledge. That is to minimize the dependence on traditional industry, which is light manufacturing, electrical appliances, trying to move up the value chain. And the third challenge is to gain new advantage, hoping on innovation, technology, and renewable energy This is to minimize the dependence on the traditional fee advantages that I mentioned. And fourthly, to reduce carbon emission. Energy cost is expensive, and also politically, not bringing this down would be intolerable in the international arena. And the fifth challenge is urbanization. Urbanization rate for China at the moment is about 47%. If you compare this to the US, which is around 80%, and other developed countries, then you will see there is still a very big gap. So in the 12 5-year plan, they've put a target of adding 5 percentage points. And this urbanization itself, the implication is continuing investment in infrastructure. And also in terms of business opportunities, instead of focusing yourself on all the primary cities, consider the secondary cities and the third kind of cities. Those may offer more opportunities. Political reform, it goes without saying, and the control of the impact on people's, the impact of inflation on people's livelihood. Well, that brings me, with that historical recap, I hope would give you a good context of what is happening in the past 30 years. And looking forward in the next 5 years, in the 12 5-year plan, there are a few key messages. Number one is stable but relatively fast economic growth. Measured by GDP, the target is the target is high single digit, anywhere between 7.5 to 9.5%. The reason being, too fast a growth would bring about the overheat situation and inflation. But too low a GDP growth would not be able to absorb the new graduates every year. If unemployment goes up, troubles politically and economically. In order to do that, they need to boost domestic consumption, drive innovation, and modern their services sector, because service sector as a percentage of Chinese GDP at the moment is around 46-47%. If you compare this to the US and the UK, they are over 75%, over 80%. Compared to Hong Kong, city economy, we are over 90%. So there is tremendous room for growth. So from an investment standpoint, this is the area that you and your business friends would be interested in. And the fourth is to promote regional cooperation, particularly for Hong Kong is Pearl River Delta region. If you want to go to Shanghai, maybe there is reason for you to go direct. If you want to go to northeastern of China, there may be business reason for you to go direct. But Pearl River Delta have about 100 million people. In terms of our country, this is the highest GDP per capita GDP area. It is not just export, it is very big consumer market. Focusing on this market alone would give you the size as big as Europe. So for Hong Kong, the Pearl River Delta is important. And the third message, of course, is continue to open up. And the fourth one is to reduce carbon emission. Hong Kong's unique role in this particular context is to help China to raise its competitiveness. This is the center for technology and knowledge transfer. This is a platform for them to experiment their policy. For example, the next move for Chinese economic development is to their financial system, to bring the renminbi to be an international currency. To do that, use Hong Kong as the platform to experiment. And of course, the management and governance expertise. The second unique role we play is international financial center. Of course, in terms of number of listed companies, in terms of market capitalization, we are smaller than Shanghai. But in terms of the credibility of the market, in terms of the openness of the market, in terms of the ability to raise funds, nowhere near Hong Kong, Shanghai. At the moment, Chinese companies, they are short in cash. But the CSRC, the Chinese Securities Regulation Exchange do not allow them to raise funds from the market. So mainland companies need, at this time, still need Hong Kong to raise funds. So this is, for us, a very important competitive advantage and contribution to our country. And thirdly, internationalization of renminbi, as I said earlier. And fourthly, we help China to upgrade its professional services and other service sector. As you may realize, when people go to China to do acquisitions, they always engage Hong Kong accounting firms to do the financial due diligence. Why? There are plenty of accounting firms on the mainland. I think it is not just our accounting standards are international level, but it is because of our integrity and professional ethics that command the trust and respect of investors. So even if they may need to pay a premium, they still use Hong Kong professionals. And Hong Kong is the gateway for China to go to the rest of the world. The next 5 years, or actually the next 10, 20 years, I think the major flow of doing business with China is Chinese investment going overseas. And in that respect, Hong Kong plays a significant role. And of course, the fourth point is the supply chain management. We got the expertise and the information availability. A leading city in PRD I mentioned earlier, so I won't repeat. And taking the accounting profession as an example, we have benefited a lot from Chinese opening up. The profession as a whole generally, and our firm in particular, along with other accounting firms. Setting up business on the mainland, if you have the experience, you know how painful it is. In Hong Kong, it is a matter of hours. You set up a company. On the mainland, it is a matter of months, and it's also very costly. Also, tax planning opportunities, tax compliance. In terms of tax penalty, if you are having tax problem and got a tax investigation on the mainland, they calculate their penalty on a daily basis. Then you know how scary that is. And thirdly, to take advantage of Hong Kong's favorable double tax agreement with the mainland. This agreement was signed just a couple of years ago. So in the past few years, I saw many foreign investors originally using an offshore company as their intermediate holding company to hold their investment into China. They all changed to use Hong Kong companies because of the favorable double tax agreements in terms of withholding tax, in terms of capital gains tax on the disposal of your investment, in terms of transfer stamp duty, we all get very preferential rate. Actually, the best rate when compared with any double tax agreements with mainland. We also advise on clients in terms of their custom, foreign exchange, and other legislative compliance. Also help them identify their business partners, joint venture partners, and acquisition targets. And in the process, also help with the financial due diligence. And also help the PLC companies to identify investors and secure financing. And second major role we have played, as you all know, is outbound IPOs from mainland of China. No matter it comes to Hong Kong or goes to New York or London, we have a role to play. Hong Kong accounting firms service many mainland companies listed on the overseas stock exchange. Let me give you a few figures. The first mainland company coming to Hong Kong for listing was Qingdao Beer. Enjoy a couple of them tonight. They came in 1993, just raised a couple $100 million. It was because at that time, after the June 4 event, China was sort of foreign exchange. But till now, the number of mainland companies listed on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange are over 500. In terms of market capitalization, they account for about 60% of our market. In terms of daily turnover, they account for over 70% of our market. So you know how significant it is. And in the next wave of economic development, I would see more and more mainland Chinese private enterprises coming to list, because in the past, it is mainly state-owned enterprises. And going forward, I'm very optimistic. We will continue to be an advisor and risk manager to foreign investors interested in doing business or investing into China. We will continue to be China's best open capital market. And we will play an increasingly important role as an advisor and risk manager to mainland companies venturing into the international arena. And in the past 12 months, we have seen changes in the attitude of mainland officials in terms of compliance. They have tightened up a lot in terms of tax compliance, individual income tax compliance, corporate transfer pricing kind of investigation are many. And that provides opportunities to us as accountants. And that also means doing business in China is, you will have very tremendous potential. But at the same time, you need to plan your activities carefully and pay more attention to the various regulatory compliance aspects. Otherwise, that could be very torturing. Yeah. Going forward, Hong Kong to become our renminbi offshore center. In terms of IPOs, we will see more IPOs denominated in renminbi. And in order to promote an active market for renminbi outside of China, to gain the international recognition and increasing use of renminbi, so that it will become a truly meaningful currency as an alternative to euro, to US. I think there would be a lot more investment products denominated in renminbi coming up. And that would also provide tremendous opportunities for professional services providers. And my final point is about the asset management center. For reasons we all know, many rich people on the mainland want to have some of their assets parked overseas, and Hong Kong is the natural choice because of the close proximity, the culture, the understanding of the regulation, and the rule of law. So with that, I conclude my presentation this morning. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. That was an interesting both macro perspective about the China and the 5-year plan and the growth, and also some specific comments on the accounting profession in China and Hong Kong. Thank you. Our last speaker is James Thompson, and you may have seen him before at previous Hong Kong forums. James is the chairman, CEO, founder, you've probably done every role in the company, of Crowe Worldwide. Crowe Worldwide is a shipping and logistics company focusing particularly on international removals and documentation management. It is the largest privately owned company in the shipping and logistics industry in the world. And it is large. You're in over 50 countries, over 250 offices, 4,000 employees, and a frequent winner of Business Excellence Awards in Hong Kong and around the world. Very impressive. I think I'm going partly by memory now, but I think you founded the company right after university. You moved to Yokohama, Japan, funded the company with $1,000? $1,000. And this is where I'm going to, yes. And I think, was it around 1978 you moved to Hong Kong to continue and to grow the business? That's very, very impressive. Privately owned still. And the perks of private ownership is his children have significant roles with the company, both in Beijing. I've met your son before. Jim, I think in Vancouver you were speaking. And also your daughter is in New York, is that correct, with Crown Shipping? He also has a hobby, wine. How many here have heard of Crown Wine Cellars in Shouson Hill in Hong Kong? He took an old derelict munitions bunker from World War II and converted it into one of the top wine clubs and private storage facilities in the world. I'm not sure if you want this advertised, but I think you have over $1 billion worth of wine and storage there. Former president of the American Chamber of Commerce, 2 terms in the mid-2000s, around 2003. Director of many companies in Hong Kong and nonprofit roles. You've also served on the Hong Kong Trade Development Council and on the advisory board to this federation. Some of you may remember just a few years ago, we had the then Financial Secretary Henry Tang speaking. Jim was at the head table and asked one pertinent question: when are you going to remove the wine duties? And I think Financial Secretary then, Henry, was a little vague, but a year later, he took his advice and removed the wine duties, and admittedly for self-interest in your case with Crown Wine Cellars. So I'm looking forward to your presentation, and as I said, I said to Jim, you've spoken at the Hong Kong Forum before, and Jim says to me, sometimes I've even spoken when I've not been asked to. So this time you're formally being asked to. Let's welcome James Thompson.
Well, thank you, Barry, and that was a great introduction, I have to say. I'm particularly happy to be here today with these 2 stars because I don't know how much you know, but these are 2 of the current and future leaders of Hong Kong, and frankly, for me, when they speak, they make a lot of sense. And I might just add that Bernie has a kind of a web page type thing that comes out several times a week, and if you haven't gotten to read it, you should, because it's his views on a number of subjects. And as you can see, they're very young. They both have genuinely black hair, which reminds me of an interesting story, and this is a true story that was told to me by the former American ambassador to Beijing. He actually went with Hu Jintao to New York on one of his visits to the United States, and during that visit, they were in New York, and Hu Jintao was at a suite at the Waldorf Astoria, and he was to meet the governor of New Jersey. And that particular governor was young, but he had prematurely gray hair, sort of like George over here. And so when this governor arrived at the suite, he said to the President Hu, he said, "My God, how do you do it?" He said, "Here I am, a young man, and I've got this gray hair, and you've got this full head of black hair. I'm just amazed." And Hu Jintao said through his interpreter, "I'd be glad to share my technology with you." So Jack, okay. But I'm also very pleased to be here among you because I look at the members of the Hong Kong Forum as Hong Kong's secret weapon. I'm so glad that it exists because you are the army of supporters of Hong Kong out there in the world, and we here in Hong Kong that love this place so much, we do really appreciate the efforts you make to keep Hong Kong prominent on the world stage. So from me, a personal thanks, and keep up the good work that you're doing. I should state in the front here, I'm an optimist by nature, and I think to be a businessman, you have to be an optimist. And when you talk about Hong Kong, it's very easy to be optimistic because there's so much good in this place and so much that's right. And Jack Bates alluded to the media here, and the media does have I think they have a DNA of cynicism in there. They are cynical about so many things. And I know we call this place Asia's World City, and I thought, that's great, great slogan. And then I saw in some of the media they're saying, wow, this is a trite slogan, it doesn't really mean anything. But the reality is, no matter what you call Hong Kong, it is a great place as long as the basics of Hong Kong stay intact. Recently, one of our candidates for chief executive, Henry Tang, was giving a talk, I think, to students. And in that talk, he said something about, you should aspire to be like Li Ka-shing. And he got a lot of criticism for this. The newspaper said he was on the wrong track, and even today they're still criticizing him for that statement. But the reality is, I think the message he was giving to the students was that you should strive for success. It's not all about money. I mean, we all like to have financial security, But I think what he was saying is that Hong Kong is a place that allows you to have success, and that's the comment he was making, but the media kind of took it out of context as far as I was concerned, and they kind of ripped him apart for that. Because while not everyone can meet the success of Li Ka-shing, the striving for it results in a lot of success, and not just in business, but in all kinds of fields. And I think this is what Hong Kong has to offer. And when I think about Hong Kong and what it would be like in the future decades, I'm very optimistic because one of the main reasons I have this positive feeling is that in the time I've been here, you know, Barry mentioned I came here 33 years ago, and long before that as well, the basic tenets of success for Hong Kong, and you hear them, you're brainwashed all the time about, you know, the taxes and the rule of law and all that. Those basic tenets have not changed. And as long as that remains, I think we have no problem of keeping the Hong Kong that we all know and love so much and that is so successful. And I have to say that no matter who wins the next election among the two key candidates, I don't think there will be any change because I think they both believe that these are the important things that make Hong Kong important. Now, Paul is a very interesting man. He's a member of LegCo, but, you know, this is a true success story because, I don't know if you mind me mentioning this, but he actually grew up in a squatter hut, and he came from a very, very poor background as a kid, and now he is not only a successful businessman, but a member of LegCo. And I think that's the Hong Kong story of people who have nothing. They came across the border, many swam, and they've had success. And I think this is what keeps me inspired, and I don't think any of that is leaving at all. And I have to say that you know, we sometimes think when the handover took place, or many of us wondered what would China change about Hong Kong, what might they deteriorate or even destroy, and they haven't done anything to deteriorate the basics of Hong Kong. They've let Hong Kong people run this place as it's always been run. And I think that is an amazing thing. One of the issues that we hear a lot about is democracy, and obviously we don't have total democracy, but we do have some. And it was very interesting because I don't know how much you keep up with it, but we recently had what we call the district council elections, which cover all of Hong Kong. And in my view, that was total democracy. I mean, everybody, you know, the grassroots people got to vote for their local representatives in the districts. And it was interesting because the results of that election, the main democracy advocates, can I say they got defeated? They did. I mean, the major parties who were pushing it, you know, did not do well in these elections for the most part. And I think this was the Hong Kong people speaking. In many ways, they were saying, I like the system. I don't want radical change. Not that they're opposed to democracy, but through that voice, they said, I think Hong Kong runs well, and I'm satisfied with what the government's doing. We do have a day here now. If you're ever here on July 1st, this is our day for everybody who's pissed off about something to come out and march on the streets. And it started with one issue, and now it's every issue you can imagine, from dogs to gays to everything else. And it's quite an interesting day. It's almost like a festival. But that's the way we do things in Hong Kong. The second thing I'd say about Hong Kong that hasn't changed, and what I feel so strongly about, is the adaptability of the Hong Kong people. You know, Jack, when he gave his comments earlier, talked about the transition that Hong Kong has seen from manufacturing up to today's service economy. And that is totally true. All those manufacturing jobs, when I got here in '78, are gone. And it hasn't been that long. It's been 3 decades. And yet we have adapted, the people of Hong Kong have adapted to the new Hong Kong without any major fluctuations. Today we have 3.3% unemployment. So all those people who were working on assembly lines learned new trades, or their children were educated to take professions. And that is what is so inspiring about this place. We adapt. We don't sit around and complain and ask the government to help us for every little thing. We adapt to the new realities of what Hong Kong is about, and we get on with it. Now, I guess I should talk a little bit about business. As Barry said, I started my company in Japan in '65, but we opened here in Hong Kong in 1970, and For a while, I just traveled down here. I didn't live here till '78. But the more I came down in the '70s, and I compared Japan, which is a fairly rigid place, to our Japanese friends here, there's nothing wrong with that. But comparing it to Hong Kong, which was this wide open, flexible place, I realized quickly that this should be the place we should headquarter our company. There was so many other advantages, but just the ease of all aspects of doing business made this the ideal choice. And as the company grew initially around Asia and later around the world, there has never been any cause for me to ever want to change the headquarters of the business from Hong Kong. And matter of fact, I'm amazed that more companies don't headquarter their business here. But in reality, as we went out into the world, and there were other nations would have things like the TDC or Invest Hong Kong, and they'd say, come here and invest. Then we'd find high taxes, we'd find bureaucracy, we'd find corruption, and we never found any place in the world that was better to operate a business from than right here in Hong Kong. And Barry mentioned the example of wine, and it is kind of funny in a way that from that day and that wonderful Hong Kong Forum luncheon when I think Henry had the thought in mind before I brought it up, by the way. But having taken that tax off wine has turned the wine segment, the wine industry of Hong Kong into something very big. And it was almost as if the Hong Kong government was acting entrepreneurially. They said, okay, we're going to invest the tax revenue, which wasn't much. It was about 700 million Hong Kong dollars. We're going to invest that into the idea of developing Hong Kong as the wine center of Asia. And that has created so much activity, so many jobs, and so much other, I should say, influence of the wine industry in Hong Kong that all of the people come here now from all over the world. As a matter of fact, we had a fellow from Bordeaux, a winemaker from Bordeaux at our facility, at our wine cellar the other day, and he said, I see my friends from Bordeaux more in Hong Kong than I see them in Bordeaux, because everybody's coming out to this part of the world. And I think that is the way Hong Kong works. It's a fantastic example. The cultural aspects of Hong Kong are rapidly becoming part of the fabric. I think for any international world city, we have all the aspects, but the soft side of culture is now developing. We will one day, I hope in my lifetime, have the Hong Kong Kowloon Cultural Center completed. But in the meantime, galleries, art galleries, and other things are popping up here on a very regular basis, and so that aspect is coming into Hong Kong, and I think that will be one of the final dimensions that will truly make this an amazing place. And as Bernie mentioned, and it's his sort of major role now, is the respect for heritage here. And personally, I love history, so I hate to see things destroyed that really do tell a story about Hong Kong. And I realize all the complications that are faced in this situation, but the reality is we must have some element of heritage because, as he said, people are no longer looking at this as a transient place. They're looking at it as their home, and they want to have a little bit of the history of that here. The current situation, I think that you all know that the world, the places that you live, are all turning to this part of the world more than they ever have before. Being in the moving business, I can tell you that the global mobility trend is definitely this way. Hong Kong being one of the greatest recipients of it. There are some issues with that because we are getting a little crowded and the schools are pretty full and whatever, and house prices are going up. But there's no question that people are saying there's problems in North America, there's problems in Europe, and the opportunities are here. And it's not. We find that in the financial world, many of these organizations, these well-known financial companies, our firms, are sending their top people here, their most senior people to Hong Kong. That's pretty impressive. But in addition, we're seeing an awful lot of young people who are looking for opportunities that they're not finding back at home to come here and to really see if they can make their way, as I did, in this vibrant part of the world. And I think there are plenty of opportunities. We are pretty much equipped to take as much as we can. We have to solve these problems of housing and schools, but Hong Kong has always been this laissez-faire type place where things adjust due to supply and demand. And maybe we're going to go through a softening period in the coming year. I think that unquestionably prices will start to adjust downward. May be difficult for some industries, but favorable for a lot of other people. So I think that's going to work out very well. Everyone is interested in the development of China, and it's been talked about, and Paul gave an excellent presentation on that just now. But I have to say that Hong Kong has really benefited from our relation with China throughout the decade of the 2000s, because they helped us during SARS, and they continue to help us both in the retail. They come here and they spend their money in our hotels and our restaurants and our retail and an ocean park and all these kind of places. But they're also helping by investing their business, listing their companies here, and doing so many things to support Hong Kong. They do drive our property prices up, which is something the government has to deal with, and I think they are dealing with it to some extent. But on net basis, the mainland Chinese have really, really helped Hong Kong stay vibrant, and I don't see that changing. I think the people from the mainland really do see some attraction in Hong Kong, whether it's to visit here, whether it's to invest here, or whether it's to live here, if that would be possible for them to do. And so I think that bodes well for Hong Kong for the future. And conversely, I think that Hong Kong people, more than most, have really benefited from taking advantage of the opportunities in China. And again, I kind of relate to something that Bernie said, and that is that one of the strongest assets of those of us who live here in Hong Kong is what we have learned, the experience we've gained over the last 30 years of how to do business in China. That is an intangible asset, but I can tell you, and a lot of it's been learned the hard way, I have to say, but it's an intangible asset that we have in this city that I think is stronger than just about anywhere else in the world in terms of how to do business there, whether it be for ourselves or whether it be for visiting international companies. So I think that is an underlying strength that we have, and the opportunities to continue to do things there will be absolutely amazing. So I'll just leave it at that. I'm very positive and optimistic by nature, but I think there's good reason to be about the way the Far East stands today, the way Hong Kong stands today, and the opportunities for all the companies that your countries represent. So I think this is a good message to take back. There's good news in the Far East, so continue to bring your companies to invest out here. So thank you very much.
Are these micro? Yeah, they are on. Thank you. I also forgot to mention about Jim. Jim was awarded a Gold Bauhinia Star by the Hong Kong government in early 2003 for community service. Well done. Thank you. We're question and answer session right now, and we're gathering written questions. But one of the perks and benefits of being the moderator is I get to ask the questions I want to start with, my own questions. I'm going to start with Bernard Chan, please. Can you link in a bit of your company, Asia Financial Holdings, to your theme of sustainability development? I believe that you focus on insurance funds, retirement funds, healthcare, also, and you did mention healthcare in your speech. But can you just talk about that and those products that you have and their role in sustainability in Hong Kong?
Thanks, Barry. As Jim alluded to earlier, that Hong Kong gone through a very interesting 40, 50 years, different crises, different cycle, and like everything else, Hong Kong people, well, naturally will adapt to the new challenges. My company, we start off as retail banking. We were a major shareholder in a retail bank and also in insurance, general insurance underwriting. But over time, as a bank, we became not very competitive because Hong Kong is a free port. We compete with just about any players in the world. So not only we are competing with the locals, we have the Europeans, American, and of course, in the last 10, 15 years, the mainland Chinese banks. So over time, my bank became very uncompetitive. We're still making money, but as a shareholder, I saw my upside is very limited. So about 4 or 5 years ago, I sold the bank. At the time, that's before the crisis, of course. So it was a good price. We got out, and we found ourselves a new opportunity. And that's always Hong Kong. You always find a new opportunity, and that's in healthcare. It's no-brainer in Hong Kong, and together in many parts of Asia, we have a very growing, aging population. Hong Kong, by 2020, we have about 25% of our population over 65. China, you'll be surprised with China, but one-child policy, they're aging fast as well. And so is Singapore, and Thailand. Many countries in Asia has this issue. So we obviously find that healthcare is going to be of growing demand. And luckily enough, we also have invested in a healthcare company in Thailand for a number of years. So we now try to team up with our Thai counterparts to come to Hong Kong and also going to China. And that's always a part about Hong Kong. We adapt fast, and we always find new opportunities. And opportunities not just only here, it's opportunity in the region. And we're able to work with multiple partners for my company. I have 2 Japanese shareholders. I have ASEAN partners. And so it's not, Hong Kong is never a place about Hong Kong. It's always about Hong Kong and the region. So I hope we find a new right future for the company. We've done well for the last 40, 50 years, and now we got hit with another new challenge. But hopefully we will find ourselves a new home and a new opportunity. And by the way, many Hong Kong companies needs to now look beyond just Hong Kong. We can't just stay in Hong Kong, because after all, we're only a city of 7 million people. Of course, 7 million is actually not small in many European standards. But for Hong Kong, many of us now need to branch out to, of course, China. But China is a very, very different place from Hong Kong. So my network in Hong Kong, my reputations in Hong Kong doesn't mean a thing in China. It might mean something across the border. But immediately beyond the city, behind that border, then it's like you're nobody. So we also need to work with partners in China. And my business in China is entirely in the hands of my Chinese partner. But my Chinese partner also needs me. So this is always about Hong Kong. It's a two-way thing. It's a two-way, hopefully a two-way mutually beneficial arrangement.
One thing I didn't mention is that your family has heritage going back to Thailand. Is that correct? And
Yes.
you're also chairman of the Hong Kong Thailand Business Council. Is that correct?
Indeed, yes.
Yeah.
Well, I think like many of us from Hong Kong, our heritage goes back to like Jim. I just realized that you start your company the year I was born. But you came here for. You've been here for 40 years. You are Hong Kong. You are one of us. My family came from China, but many of our relatives have actually moved to Thailand, and that's not unusual. Many of us in Hong Kong came from all parts of the world, mostly from China, but then we are now here in Hong Kong. Some are relatives, your relatives probably all over Asia, and that's the great thing about us, because that's how actually business works, networking. We network not only here but around the region.
Best city in the world for networking. You're right. Paul, one thing about you that I didn't mention was that I believe you're a board member of the West Kowloon Cultural District. And can you talk about that and how that can be important to the business community, the cultural district, and how that can help support and sustain the business community?
Oh, sure, Barry. Well, the government has very generously earmarked a very big piece of land in West Kowloon for development into a cultural and arts district. And apart from the land, the government has also allocated 21.6 billion Hong Kong dollar for this to be developed. The reason being an international city, the feedback we gather from a business executive and also international investor is that basing their headquarters here, doing business here is not just making money, but as Bernard said, you have to take care of your children. So education opportunities. You have to be able to provide after 7 o'clock activities apart from Lan Kwai Fong. So in London, in New York, you can go to theater. A lot of different things to do. And we think to be an international city, we need that particular element. It will be a very important part of our formula to succeed. So the project is going on. When it was first started, there were suspicion in the community about this will become a property project instead of a cultural project. So it got a little delayed. But in the past 3 years, our then Chief Secretary, Henry, has led the project in the right direction. We finished three rounds of consultations. We invited international renowned architects to do the master layout plans. So the things are progressing quite well. And I'm sure, Jim, you will enjoy many of the facilities there. The first facility is expected to be operational in 2016.
Good. James, I have a question from Russia, and it was actually the same question I was going to ask you. I mentioned that you started your business with $1,000 in Yokohama, Japan in 1965. Is that possible to still start and be an entrepreneur of a company, of any company like that? But I'm going to add my own twist to the question. If you were advising a young man or woman right out of university in the United States to become an entrepreneur, what city would you recommend? Hong Kong, Shanghai, Japan, somewhere else in Asia? What's the best one today?
You expect me to say? No, actually, it's funny you say that because I often do speak to university students about my company, and I told them the story of the $500 startup and all that, and one kid raised his hand in the Q&A and he said, Mr. Thompson, if I give you $500, could you do that for me? He said, and so I said, well, you give me your life and all. No, actually, I think the
that
answer
doesn't really fit the theme of taking responsibility for your own success, does it?
Well, I think the answer is, maybe not $500, maybe not $1,000, because inflation has changed all that. But I do think that the opportunities remain, and I think that's the big point. My story is interesting, and there are a lot more stories in Hong Kong of how things happened with small startups and all the rest of it. But I think when people say, oh, I missed the boat, and the opportunities were in the past, they're not here now, and I think that's absolute nonsense. There's so many opportunities because when I started in '65, there was no China. It was closed until the 70s, and now China is this behemoth with lots and lots of opportunities. Tricky as they may be, you're looking at massive amount of wealth generation in this country, and they're going to want everything. And I think entrepreneurial type minds will find the opportunities to do things there. As far as the city is concerned, it has to be Hong Kong. There's no question about it. I mean, I think we always talked about, will Shanghai take all our bread and butter away? Well, this massive market allowed us to be in Hong Kong and Shanghai and Beijing and Chengdu and all the rest of it. And but Hong Kong, without question, at least I would never change my mind about that because of the way the system works here, and because of the many advantages, tax being a big one. I think that to base a business here and then do things in other parts of Asia, and it's not just China. I think Southeast Asia Malaysia has some opportunities in other countries. Indonesia, Fred and I were just saying, Indonesia is booming. So there's a lot of opportunities to do different types of things in these countries and become entrepreneurial and succeed.
Good. Thanks. That's very encouraging. Paul, I've got a couple of questions here that are very similar on the accounting and the markets in China. And I'll read them both, and I'll let you decide on how you're going to answer that. Is that okay?
All right. Yeah.
Okay. This one comes from the U.S., and it's the Hong Kong-China accounting scandals recently have cost Chinese and Hong Kong companies billions of dollars of market capitalization. And so can you comment on the reforms that are being planned to help restore confidence and trust in publicly listed Hong Kong Chinese companies? And the second question comes from Finland, and it's, how do you see the recent rules about international auditing standards and IFRS and the compliance is not required from PRC companies listed on the Hong Kong market? I assume that's true. that they're not required anymore, but I'll let you comment on both, please.
All right. Well, the Chinese accounting standards today have converged with international accounting standards. So, well, as you know, Hong Kong accounting standards adopt 100% international standards. Since Chinese accounting standards are now fully converged with international standards, and the Chinese Accounting Standards Board has signed an agreement with the International Accounting Standards Board to that effect. That means the standards between Hong Kong and the mainland are the same as far as listed companies are concerned. Because for China, the fully converged international standard was start to be used in listed companies back in 2007, back in 2008, and in 2009 they start to expand the application of the international standard to banks, financial institutions, and in 2009 they extended to other large state-owned enterprises. So not all the companies on the mainland of China use full international standards, but for listed companies, surely they adopt international standards. That's why towards the end of last year, the Hong Kong Stock Exchange made a relaxation, in quotation, relaxation saying that mainland companies can use mainland accounting standards and a few mainland accounting firms to do their annual audits for the purpose of their listing on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange. At the moment, mainland accounting firms that can have this auditing right altogether are 12 in number, including the big four on the mainland of China. And these are the largest firms on the mainland. If we look at the number, at the moment there are about 6,000 plus accounting firms on the mainland. About 50 plus of them can do mainland listed companies audit on the mainland. But out of this, only 12 of them can do the audit for external reporting purposes, like Hong Kong. So I hope that gives you the background and explanation as to why Chinese companies listed on our stock exchange can do that. In fact, we in Hong Kong cannot resist that requisition, because in Hong Kong we allow Canadian companies like Manulife, British companies like HSBC, and other companies in, say for example, in Australia, coming to be listed on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange to use their home country auditing firms. They do not need to use Hong Kong auditing firms. So we must treat every country on an equal footing. In the past, we did not allow mainland companies to use mainland audit firms by reason of their standards are not yet converged with international standard. Okay. The second question about the the companies listed on the U.S. Stock Exchange having accounting scandals. Yes, there are several companies. But the background is these companies went to the U.S. and did the backdoor listing instead of a normal IPO. I think the regulatory philosophy between the stock exchanges in the U.S. and stock exchange here is quite different. This kind of companies, if they are good enough, probably they would be able to be listed here. The fact that they go through reverse the black door, if I may say so, tells something about the quality of the company itself. As to the auditing issues, I would say by and large, the profession in Hong Kong, has been doing very well. You do not see many corporate failures here, even in the face of Asian financial crisis back in 1998 or the recent financial tsunami. Because usually when the times are bad, then the companies are more easy to go bust. But if you look at the Hong Kong market, really not many listed company having such problem. But we tend to have bad apples in a big tree. This is a fact of life. But I don't think it casts any doubt on the integrity of the profession and the regulatory rigor of the profession here.
Yeah, thank you. One of the things from my own professional experiences I've seen is the Hong Kong Stock Exchange going after and encouraging secondary listings. And we talked about foreign companies who may be listed in their home market, but the Hong Kong Stock Exchange is encouraging them to do a secondary listing on this exchange here. And part of the reason is that when foreign companies have China assets, because of the political uncertainty, the home country might have a discount built into the share price, effectively a China risk. But because the investment analyst community understands that, there's probably less of a discount on a Hong Kong Stock Exchange than there would be for foreign exchange. And that's very important when a foreign company might have China assets like mining properties or resource properties. Doing the secondary listing will get a higher share price because less of a discount, because this community understands that. Bernard, back to you. Property is a main component of the Hong Kong economy, and basically property development is a major wealth generator in this city. Can you comment on Hong Kong's success in developers creating sustainable buildings in Hong Kong?
That's got to be a tricky question, isn't it? You're absolutely right. Property or homes to Hong Kong people is more than just a home. This is, to them, it's a commodity. This is how they trade up in the value chain. As you put it, it's a wealth generation, a tool for wealth generation. So it has been part of the system. But I think increasingly people in Hong Kong now, as I mentioned earlier, we no longer treat this place as just a temporary, borrowed time in a borrowed place. This is our home. So increasingly people in Hong Kong are demanding more than just a home. It's the quality of life. So in the last few years, the government has also recognized the increasing demand from the consumers. Though we have actually now have almost like a revamp of many of the old policies, where now we want to make sure that the new design of most of these so-called housing estates will meet the new standards, especially the environment standard. They are more sustainable. There will be more airflow. Because the problem in Hong Kong is they're very, you look at Hong Kong, I mean, with 7 million people, but only really less than 30% of our land mass is really being populated. Why? Because 40% is in the country parks and 30% in the rural areas. So really only 28, to be exact, it's only 28% of our land mass is being used. So in one way, you can say we are very green, because we produce very little carbon emission. It's very concentrated. Whereas I'm sure in Los Angeles, you'll be traveling in every direction as possible. So in Hong Kong, that sense is good, but at the same time, because it's so dense, everything goes vertical. But when it gets vertical, you also create another problem, so the blockage of airflow and so on. The visual is also no good. So these are the issues that in the last couple of years, I think people are now demanding changes. So we are now trying to see if we can somehow maintain that connectivity. People are so accustomed to it. Anyone in Hong Kong can get to work within 1 hour, pretty much, with our mass transport. But now we have to start looking and say, well, if we don't want the density, can we afford to move a little further out? Can we start to tap into the rural areas? Now, of course, the green groups are also very concerned with that. So it's a question how you balance that. And in Hong Kong, unlike, I know I'm going to get myself in trouble, our counterparts in Shanghai or our counterparts in Singapore, if the government decides to do something, it's going to happen. In Hong Kong, well, not anymore these days. You got to do it. If anything you do, you got to make sure that you consult them consult all the different stakeholders. So it takes a little bit longer time. As you alluded earlier about that whole cultural hub, and Jim said that in your lifetime, I hope it's going to be within your lifetime. Why is it taking so long? Because this is Hong Kong. You need to make sure that every stakeholders are consulted. And now under Paul leadership, hopefully that it will be done by 2016. I'm sure in Shanghai it will be done in like 3 years. But that's not how Hong Kong works, and that's not the spirit of Hong Kong. Here in this city, I think we pride ourselves to be, even though that we are not every one of us have a chance to vote for our leader, but yet I think every one of us proud to say that our voice will be heard.
I have a very quick follow-up question tying in the theme of property and sustainability. Can I get a quick answer to this next question? Are today's Hong Kong property prices sustainable?
Accountant to answer that question.
Okay, no comment. Fair enough.
Yeah, actually, in terms of transaction, not a lot these days, and we see price coming down very slowly. Mm-hmm. But I think everyone in Hong Kong, except those who haven't got a property, would agree with me that we cannot afford a sharp fall in our property price. Mm-hmm. So if there is any adjustment, it hopefully would be a moderate, controlled stabilization, waiting for the purchasing power to catch up.
Okay, good. I've got a last question here. We're running out of time, but very quickly, James. Now that you've mastered international removals, you're top of the chain in the wine industry. What's your next business venture?
Well, if you really want to know, actually we're doing now we're going into fine arts. We're going to build a global network of fine arts removals for museum pieces and that sort of thing. We're actually doing it already in Paris. We just bought a company based in Finland, which has offices in Russia and Holland and Belgium and China. So we're determined, as our network of moving companies has been so successful, why not have a network of fine arts companies? So that's the next effort.
Good linkage. 3 great speakers, 3 great insights from each of them. On behalf of everyone here, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bernard Chen, Mr. Pao Chen, Mr. James Thompson, and Mr. Barry McDonald.